The defense team for Derek Chauvin could begin to start calling witnesses as early as today. This will be the first time jurors will hear from witnesses for the defense in the murder trial of the former Minneapolis police officer charged with killing George Floyd. And this comes after emotional testimony yesterday from George Floyd's brother. Vinoo Varghese is with us now to provide some insight as the trial continues. He is a criminal defense attorney and a former prosecutor. So great to have you here because you know both sides in the courtroom. The defense is expected to begin its case today. So where do we anticipate the trial going from here? Is it likely that we will hear from Derek Chauvin himself?
So 2 weeks ago, I was on with Elaine in the evening, and I told her that Chauvin would have to testify because of the nature of the video, and he'd have to explain himself, and that he was probably the only one who could save him from a certain conviction. However, after watching this trial for a couple of weeks, one of the things that's concerned me is that his lawyer hasn't done a good enough job, hasn't made enough objections. So now if Chauvin were to take the stand, that would be used against him on appeal. I believe Chauvin now, his only chance of victory is on appeal because there have been so many things his lawyer has done that have been legally deficient that if he takes the stand, it basically wipes it clean because the appellate court will look at it like, well, the jury didn't believe you. But if he doesn't take the stand, then you have those pure legal arguments preserved. So it's a mixed answer. At this point, I don't believe he should take the stand, whereas 2 weeks ago, I thought he needed to.
So I'm curious, what sort of pick out one or two of the most maybe egregious failures that you found with his defense attorneys, his defense strategy?
Well, his attorney is certainly prepared. He's asking good questions, and he's had his moments where he's poked some holes in the prosecution case. The problem is you've had a parade of medical experts testify. You've had a ton of police witnesses testify, all of them essentially saying the same thing. There's a term for this in the law. It's called cumulative evidence, where it's overkill. That's the layman's way of looking at it. Why do you have so many witnesses saying the same thing? Oh, that Derek Chauvin was overbroad. He went too far, or that he definitely didn't die of a drug overdose. You just need one person to come forward and say it. When you've got like 10, saying the same thing, you've created a situation that's not fair for the defense, because how is he expected to put on so many witnesses? He can't. He won't be able to because he doesn't have the resources that the state of Minnesota has, as well as all the pro bono help that the state of Minnesota has from lawyers around the country who've helped him. So therefore, his lawyer needed to make objections throughout. But there have been no objections made during, hardly any during the trial by Nelson, which leads me to believe he's just not up to task for this kind of case.
That's really interesting. I also sort of noticed that there have been people on the stand that are not sort of official experts, but they're kind of using their expertise and in a way sort of testifying as experts, talking about use of force and things like that, even though they weren't placed on the stand as experts. And I did wonder about why his defense attorneys weren't objecting to that too. But let me ask you a little bit about some of the testimony that we heard yesterday. We heard from George Floyd's little brother. He took the stand. How important was his testimony?
Well, the question of importance is one that's going to be looked at when you look at this case after Chauvin gets convicted, because the testimony itself was completely irrelevant. There's no reason his brother should be testifying as to the fact that he loved his mother. I know there's some quirky provision in Minnesota state law that allows something called a spark of life witness to testify about some stuff. It went too far. That was gut-wrenching testimony. It was heartbreaking testimony. I mean, when the jurors go back to deliberate, they're given an instruction that says sympathy should play no part in your decision, that you must make your decision based on the facts. How are they not going to be affected by this testimony? And I understand that there was some objections here. It appears Nelson did do some objections prior to the testimony, but during the testimony, he didn't object and he didn't ask any questions. Why is there a picture of George Floyd's mother before the jury? Why is there a picture of George Floyd's daughter before the jury? There were no objections made by Nelson while this was going on. And now that the judge has allowed this kind of testimony, Nelson should have come back hard. Oh, the brother talked about how great he was and how much he loved his mother, how much he loved women, and he was such a good man. Well, at that point, Nelson's got to go at him because the prosecution opened the door to questions such as, really, are you aware that your brother was convicted in a 2007 home invasion robbery of a pregnant woman? Is that showing respect to your mother? I mean, these are the kind of questions. Nelson isn't up to task. Chauvin brought a knife, even though he's a cop trained in use of firearms. He brought a knife to a gunfight.
Really interesting observation. See, that's why, your experience as a defense attorney is so valuable. Before I let you go, I got to ask you about this. Unfortunately, there was another police-involved death that took place literally just miles away from where the Derek Chauvin trial is. As a result, there have been protests in the streets. The judge denied the defense's request to sequester the jury following this death and these protests. What did you make of that decision?
I think the judge should have, before even getting to the point of granting or denying that motion, he should have polled the jury, which means ask them questions. Hey, obviously this happened. Will this affect your ability to be fair and impartial and give Derek Chauvin a fair trial? Judge didn't ask those questions. Why? Because he doesn't want to know the answers to those questions, because you only have two alternates. You may have jurors dropping like flies as this case is getting to the point now the defense is going to go. I mean, this is tough. This is very tough for these jurors. I do believe, in Nelson's deficiencies notwithstanding, I believe that there are grounds, there's enough reasonable doubt to acquit Chauvin. But with the performance by Nelson, it's going to make it that much harder for him. But these jurors are in a position that even with reasonable doubt, will they actually acquit? Will they be worried so much about the reaction to them? Can they go home and face people? I mean, eventually their names are going to come out. So it's a question of, do they have the fortitude to make the decision, the right decision, or based on the law, not on emotion? But there's just been too much going on. And I think that this will be another issue that Chauvin can raise on appeal.
Vinoo, really fascinating insight. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Day 12 of Derek Chauvin's trial is set to get underway in just a few hours. You can stream it live right here on CBSN starting at around 10:30 a.m. Eastern.